Before we go any further, make sure you're subscribed to the Prepper Historian and, share this channel with someone who values real military history, not just surface-level trivia. Today's episode isn't entertainment fluff. This is about battlefield ingenuity under pressure, the kind of thinking that separated survival from death. If you're here because you want to understand how ordinary soldiers adapted when doctrine failed and supply lines collapsed, you're in the right place. World War II forced millions of men into environments where issued weapons broke, ammunition vanished, and improvisation became doctrine by necessity. The romantic image of a fully equipped army rarely matched reality at the front. What follows are not myths or campfire stories, but documented adaptations used by soldiers who learned quickly that everyday objects could be turned into lethal force multipliers. These hacks mattered because they worked, and because the mindset behind them remains relevant to historians and preparedness thinkers alike. The first hack came from turning entrenching tools into close-quarters weapons. When firearms jammed in mud-choked trenches or dense forests, soldiers relied on what was already in their hands. The humble entrenching tool, originally designed for digging foxholes, became a brutal, close combat weapon. Sharpened edges, reinforced handles, and compact size made it effective in tight spaces where rifles were useless. German, Soviet, and Allied troops all used them in assaults and ambushes. The lesson here isn't how to replicate the weapon, but understanding that tools designed for labor often survive conditions that precision equipment cannot. For modern survivalists, this really reinforces the value of multi-use gear that functions even when broken, wet, or abused. The second hack involved glass bottles becoming anti-armor solutions. Infantry units frequently faced tanks without proper anti-tank weapons. Soldiers adapted by filling glass bottles with flammable liquids and igniting them on impact. These improvised incendiaries weren't precision tools, but when aimed at engine compartments or vision slits, they could disable vehicles or force crews to abandon them. Historically, this shows how understanding enemy vulnerabilities mattered more than having advanced gear. The broader application today is studying systems for weak points rather than relying on brute force or ideal equipment. The third hack turned wire, string, and scrap into deadly booby traps. Tripwires connected to grenades, falling objects, or noise-making devices were assembled from scavenged materials. These weren't elaborate constructions. They were simple, fast, and psychologically effective. Even when they failed to kill, they slowed advances and exhausted enemy morale. From a historian's perspective, this demonstrates how terrain denial doesn't require technology, only time and awareness. For preparedness thinking, it underscores how early warning systems can be just as valuable as direct defense. The fourth hack repurposed socks, sand and cloth into impact weapons. In prisoner camps and urban fighting, soldiers sometimes filled socks with sand, gravel or soap to create compact bludgeons. These weapons were concealable and effective when firearms were forbidden or impractical. They remind us that control over materials rarely eliminates violence, it simply changes its form. The takeaway is not imitation, but recognition of how restrictions drive innovation, a pattern repeated across every conflict in history. The fifth hack used vehicle parts as improvised fragmentation devices. Broken engine components, bolts, and metal scraps were packed around explosives to increase shrapnel effect. Soldiers understood intuitively what engineers formalized later. Fragmentation multiplies lethality. This wasn't refinement, it was necessity. The historical insight here is how battlefield learning traveled faster than official manuals. For modern analysts, it shows how bottom-up innovation often outpaces centralized planning in crisis environments. The sixth hack involved adapting farming tools for urban warfare. Scythes, axes and cleavers were pressed into service by resistance fighters and militias when firearms were unavailable. These tools already existed in civilian life, required no training to use, and could be hidden in plain sight. Their use highlights how warfare blurs into civilian space when supply chains collapse. For preparedness thinkers, it reinforces the idea that, well, familiarity with common tools can outweigh specialized training in emergencies. The seventh hack transformed simple mirrors and periscopes into survival devices. Small mirrors, shaving kits, and salvaged optics were used to observe enemy positions without exposure. While not weapons themselves, they prevented casualties and enabled ambushes. In combat, information is a weapon. Historically, this shows how soldiers valued visibility and intelligence even more than firepower. In modern terms, situational awareness remains the most underappreciated survival skill. The eighth hack repurposed kitchen knives into silent combat tools. In resistance movements, knives were shortened, balanced, and concealed for close assassinations where gunfire meant death. These were tools of desperation, not heroics. Their existence reminds us that silence was often more valuable than force. The broader lesson is how environment dictates tactics and why adaptability mattered more than bravery. The ninth hack came from turning fear itself into a weapon. Soldiers used sound traps, false movements, and decoys built from scrap to exaggerate force strength. Empty helmets on sticks, noisemakers, and dummy fires misled enemies and saved lives. Psychological warfare didn't require radios or propaganda offices, only creativity. For historians, this reinforces that perception often mattered more than reality on the battlefield. World War II wasn't won solely by factories and generals. It was shaped by ordinary soldiers solving immediate problems with whatever they had left. If you study these hacks seriously, you're not learning how to fight. You're learning how humans adapt under pressure when systems fail. That mindset is what connects military history to modern preparedness. If this kind of grounded, no-nonsense history matters to you, subscribe to The Prepper Historian, share this episode, and keep this knowledge alive.